As soon as you start playing Dungeons and Dragons, one of the things you learn about really quickly early on in the game is money, coins, gold pieces, and so forth. And the value that the gold piece has, I think, has always been a challenge for us as players and maybe even as DMs to sort of wrap our heads around. I'm sure some people have a great grasp of it and see it clearly for themselves. But for the rest of us, there's this weird thing of like, what's a gold piece actually worth? And I thought it would make a great topic for today's vlog. Thank you for joining me. I'm Gregory. This is 1 in 20 D&D. You probably already know that, and this of course is DnDaily, my daily vlog where I talk about Dungeons and Dragons and role-playing games and everything connected to this fantastic hobby. I want to dive into understanding a little bit about the different coins that we find in Dungeons and Dragons and give us a sense of like, how can we make a sort of a modern relationship with those coins so that when we spend them in the game, it gives us a sense of what we're actually spending, you know? So obviously, this topic is a little bit maybe controversial. At the very least, it's a very subjective perspective, probably. Oh, that was funny, and I did not mean to alliterate that, but hey, it's a subjective perspective. In other words, what value you place on gold is going to be different than what value I place on gold, and so let's just try to find maybe some kind of a common ground. First, let me say that if you've never played Dungeons and Dragons before, that's okay. You may play other RPGs and that may have led you here. However, probably most of you are familiar with the game and you know that the values of coins are as such. Copper piece, silver piece, electrum piece, whatever that is, gold piece, and platinum piece. That's sort of the variations of the coins from least valuable to most valuable. Platinum pieces being the highest, copper being the lowest. Now, if you go to a city such as the famous Waterdeep, some cities will have their own coinage, their own mints, and their own names for those coins. If you go into the Dragon Heist game, the Waterdeep Dragon Heist module and so forth, you'll find all that information in there, the dragoons and so forth, and bits and all whatever they refer to it in Waterdeep. But that's kind of specific to the city of Waterdeep. They have their own mint there, and they use their own coins there because many of the people that live in the city never leave the greatest city in the world of Faerun. Why would you? That being said, for those adventurers that maybe travel around the realms or play in a homebrew world and so forth, what do these things actually represent? Because it's easy for us to think of a copper piece like we might think of a penny, because pennies are copper, right? Isn't that what a copper piece is? Now, maybe the size, weight, and so forth might be similar. However, the value of a copper piece, in my opinion, is nowhere near the current modern value, at least we Americans place on a penny. Of course, if you're from the UK or somewhere else in the world and you watch my videos, forgive me, I am going to place everything in terms of US dollars because that's what I know. So please take the opportunity to inform us, like loonies and all that. I don't know anything about that stuff, or pesos or what have you. So unfortunately, I can't place things in those references. I'm gonna stick to the US dollar. So back to the point, a copper piece might look like a penny. It might be about the same size and weight as a penny. However, it doesn't necessarily have a one-to-one correlation in quite the value, because for us, we do tend to a lot of Americans could care less about pennies. Lots of people will throw pennies, or if they drop them, they don't bother. Other people, it's like every penny counts. And that's, again, why I said this is so subjective. And in game terms, I mean, most adventurers, once they get beyond the very low level of tier, like once you get beyond first, second, maybe even just first level, you start accumulating gold, and the copper pieces sort of don't seem as important as anymore. So what is the value of a gold piece, right? How do we relate? And we can think of it in terms of, for instance, let's say you go into a tavern and you order a drink. A common drink might only be 6 copper, or perhaps if it's a finer, nicer drink, maybe you're gonna pay a couple silver. In fact, you could probably get a pretty comfortable lodging and meal and everything included for just a few silver. So what if we think of a silver piece as maybe like $10 or $20? That might start to put things in a little bit more perspective. You know, when you break a silver piece, it might be like we modern Americans breaking a $10 bill, or maybe even a $20 bill might be a little more accurate. Of course, the numbers get funky because, you know, 10 to 100 as far as silver to gold. So there's 10 silver pieces in a gold piece. Well, it's easier to say, oh, well, that maybe means it's like $10. But even that doesn't seem real, because a lot of people in the game we play, peasants and stuff, we have to think that they might not see a gold in their whole, you know, in their year. They might not accumulate a gold piece over the course of a year. Or maybe they might, but maybe only a handful, 2 or 5 or 10 gold pieces might be like a relative fortune for a peasant. Whereas as an adventurer, we're putting our lives on the line. We're risking life and limb every time we go and face another enemy. And so because of that high risk, of course there's huge rewards, treasure and magic items and piles of gold. So it's such a funny thing. This topic has always boggled my mind. This is why I thought it'd be fun to talk about and just explore a little bit. You know, like what if, for instance, a copper piece was more akin to, say, a US dollar? Like, for instance, I am not gonna sweat if I go to a coffee shop and I gotta pay $3 or $4 or $5 for a coffee. I mean, yeah, it kind of hurts on a certain level, but at the same time, in our modern world, that's sort of what we expect. Whereas 50 or 100 years ago, it would have been absurd to think of paying $5 for a coffee. Like, you know, when my parents were kids, like let's say 50 years ago or 100, well, I'm almost that, more than 50, 75 to 100 years ago, that's probably a better gauge. Oh my goodness, I'm almost 50, y'all. Sorry for that aside. Back to the story. Well, check this out. Let's say 100 years ago. 100 years ago, a coffee probably would have only cost you like 5 or 10 cents. Literally 5 pennies, a nickel, would have gotten you a cup of coffee, and it would have probably been, just like today, a basically bottomless cup of coffee if you went into a diner and what have you. 5 cents. Compared to today, where it's like $5 gets you a one-time cup at Starbucks or Pizza or wherever you like to go for your coffee. That's a huge difference in only a short 100 years. So in the game, we need to sort of put those things in perspective. If an ale, let's say, costs 6 copper pieces, well, in my mind, that would be akin to going to a bar, a restaurant, and so forth and paying like $6 for a beer. If I go pay $5 for a Budweiser, now just to be clear, I'm not actually endorsing Budweiser. I am more of a craft beer kind of guy. In fact, if I'm gonna drink, I'm probably gonna be drinking an ale or a whiskey, and I don't even drink all that much. So this is not an endorsement. It's just that I think Budweiser is a well-known, well-recognized beer, and I thought it would make a good example. That's all this is just an example. If I go pay $5 for a Budweiser, I probably wouldn't be too shocked if I'm at a restaurant. Now, obviously, when I go to the store, I want a much better price. But see, now we're starting to get a frame of reference. So for me, if I go and I buy something I really, really want, I might spend, you know, 50 or 100 bucks on, let's say, I don't know, a brand new pair of shoes, like really, really nice shoes. Okay, some people can't even imagine spending $100 on a pair of shoes. Like for them, if they have to pay more than 10 or 20 bucks on a pair of shoes, they're like, what are you talking about? Whereas other people will spend $1,000 on a pair of shoes because that's what they're interested in. They want fine crafted Italian leather, the best money can buy. This is why this topic, again, I feel like I'm repeating myself. I'm just trying to share some relative items that we can sort of get a sense of. So for a peasant, spending, let's say, a gold piece, if we think of a gold piece more like maybe $100, spending a gold piece on a pair of boots, like leather boots, like those boots better last us a few years. More likely we're gonna make them ourselves, and that's the reality of, you know, medieval times or fantasy worlds. That's the reality. So does that mean that a copper piece is like a modern day US dollar? That seems a little more accurate to me. That would mean that, again, a silver piece would be like, I said, like 10 bucks, and a gold piece is more like $100. That means if you're an adventurer and you go on an adventure and you receive 10 gold pieces at first level, that's $1,000. That's, I mean, you know, again, it's relative. If you make 100K a year, you're like, okay, $1,000, big deal. But if you only make 10 or 20 or 30,000 a year, $1,000 is a big chunk. That's like a week or maybe 2 weeks worth of work for you. And you did it in like a day or a couple of hours maybe or something. And if you get 100 gold pieces or 500 gold pieces, 500 gold pieces at $100 each gold piece, now we're talking big amounts of money. And I'm not even sure if 1 to 100 is a reasonable exchange or, you know, relationship, because really, if we think, again, think about a peasant compared to an adventurer in the game, right? Or even a tavern keeper. For a tavern keeper, they might earn 500 gold pieces in the course of a few months or a year, especially if it's a very successful tavern. I mean, of course, they might take in much more than that. Maybe they take in, let's say, 5,000 gold pieces. However, they have upkeep, right? It's a business. They have to pay for repairs. They have to pay for staff. They have to pay for goods and so forth. And so, you know, maybe for an innkeeper, a 500 gold piece per year, you know, take home is pretty amazing. And then you look at kings and queens and dragons and other monsters that hoard like thousands of gold pieces or tens of thousands of gold pieces, and that's when it starts to get staggering. Am I way off base here? Like, I really think that I'm gonna start, for the next short period of time, that's how I'm gonna relate to this. I feel like $1 for 1 copper feels about right for today. It might change, and I would love to know what you think about this, because you might have a better idea. You might have a different idea than I do, and I would love to know, because this is something that has been ongoing since I started playing D&D. Like, what is a gold piece worth? Yes, I want lots of them, but why, and what does it mean in the game? Like, what can I buy with all that gold? Of course, I can look at the page, but I want to have a deeper understanding, a more meaningful understanding of the gold piece value of things. So tell me your thoughts about that. Take a minute and watch this video next. I'll see you at a table someday. Keep rolling 20s, and remember, it's your game. Play your way.